Salutations Rangers, General Bradley 101 back again with some more lore. And in today's video, boys and gals, we're talking about something very, very important to the setting. An age-old question which everyone has been asking both in the universe of Warhammer 40k and without in the fandom. Is the Emperor of Mankind truly a god? Or is he just a 10,000-year-old corpse on a dying throne of gold? Well, in today's video, boys and gals, we're going to find out just exactly what is the Emperor of Mankind. And is there in fact more than just one emperor? So, buckle up, strap on in, grab yourself a snack, do the liking, comment, share, subscribe, and all that wonderful YouTube stuff, and let's get crackin' on in today's video. Alrighty, so for those of you who know the story about Biggie wasn't exactly the biggest fan of the idea of religion. He very much loved Reddit, and he really did love his fedoras. But that being said, he did acknowledge the existence of gods. More specifically, the gods of chaos, and he acknowledged that they thrived with worship. Therefore, how do you kill said chaos gods? You get them to stop worshipping. Simple as. Except Biggie ran into the small issue that a lot of new parents run into, is that there's a big difference between preparing your children for the world and completely hiding it from them. And then of course that caused the whole heresy and all that, and then Biggie got shanked and then got placed on the golden throne. Technically, he was still alive. But throughout the entirety of Biggie's reign on the golden throne, his psyche has been fractured. It is said that his mighty psychic powers, his mental mind, fractured into several hundred different pieces. There are some that say even several thousands. But we know that it's definitely a lot, certainly more than two. But you have bits and pieces of Biggie floating around everywhere here, and some argue that they're different incarnations of him. Some argue that every single living saint is an incarnation of Biggie, and that a spirit and chip of Biggie is in that said incarnation. Of course, there is the various theories about the Star Child as well as the Dust City, but basically, we don't really know what Biggie is. But with the latest round of novels we got in regarding Bobby G and the Plague Wars as well as the Biggie and all that, Papa Emperor came out of his shell, and he showed that he is still just as mighty as ever. He went into Nurgle's gardens, burned them sons of bitches, restored Bobby G back to life, smacked Nurgle in the nuts, and told Mortarion that he isn't actually that disappointed with him. And such a display of might was so potent that even Gilman had to take pause and say, maybe Dad really is a god. What the fuck? Well, I mean, I suppose that should answer the question, right? Oh, it's done and dusted. Biggie is, in fact, a god. Case closed, everything over, pack up, let's go to the bar. But was that really Biggie? Was that really the Emperor? Or was it something altogether different? Now, let's talk about the warp. You see, the warp used to be space heaven. But basically what happened is the war in heaven happened, and there was so much death, destruction, cataclysm, and bullshit going on that heaven, quite literally, became hell. And then of course you had the fall of the Eldari and birth of Slanesh, and that really sailed the nail in the coffin. But the way that it works is that everyone's soul, when they die, goes into the warp, and there are different places in the warp. If your soul is claimed by Chaos, you go to one of the 4 Chaos realms. If your soul is claimed to one of the Eldari gods, it will go there. Or at least now it will go there because there's the God of the Dead. But maybe that's not the case because GW completely forgot about that storyline and now retconned it, so I don't know, maybe. If you're an orc, you go over to Gork and Mork, and if you're a human being, you go to the Emperor. If you pray to the Emperor, that is. But basically, what I'm driving at is that all the power that these entities in the warp have come from their mortal followers praying and worshipping unto them. It's very much like the old school pantheons that we have in our old history. They are only powerful if people worship them. So in Warhammer 40k, whenever you say a prayer, whenever you do a purity seal, whenever you go to a cathedral of the Emperor, you are saying a prayer, you're doing all that, a bit of your energy is being sent into the warp and is being taken by the Emperor. But the question is the Emperor really in the warp? You see, we know about Biggie as well as his interactions with the Chaos Gods. More specifically, how he made a deal with them to help make the Primarchs, how he then backslid on that deal and then scene sheeted the kids all over everywhere. And Biggie is very much a calculating, and some would say conniving, man of purpose. He wants something. He wants to get out of it, and he's trying to cut a business deal here, because he has a purpose. His purpose being to save humanity and to usher us into the next generation, whatever that may be. But here's the thing. When Biggie died, and when he was interned on the Golden Throne, he was still immortal. Now, some will argue that he is kept alive through psychic means, 1,000 psychic souls are sacrificed a day to keep him alive, so some would make the argument that his psychic power is being translated from the Golden Throne into the warp. The Golden Throne is indeed a warp-based device, hence why it was able to seal off the webway for all that time. But the question is that really Biggie in the warp? Or is it something altogether different? Because remember, the main issue with it being Biggie in the warp is that Big E is pretty much batshit crazy. We know this because when Gilliman first talks to Big E, it's like talking to a schizophrenic computer. He is all types of cooked, he is broken, he is hundreds if not thousands of different fragments of the mighty man he once was, all talking to each other and communicating a giant load of nonsense. It's all bad. So, if Big E in IRL space is so cooked, what makes us think that in the warp, he's all put together? There is another theory, and one that I personally subscribe to, and that's that maybe there was a shard of Emperor, maybe his noble shard or whatever shard it was, that made its way into the warp. Then over 10,000 years, millions, trillions, billions, quadrillions, however many gargantuan amount of human beings that there are earnestly sending prayers to the God Emperor. Because yes, while you do have some ecclesiastical and as well as some inquisitorial stooges who are just assholes and don't actually care about the Emperor, much like in our own religions, whilst you may have a few at the top who are bad apples, the average man genuinely prays to God. And he genuinely prays with sincerity, and his prayers go up to heaven, or in this case, into the warp. So you have, however billion, trillion, quadrillion members of humanity over 10,000 years, earnestly sending their prayers into the warp, earnestly praying for the good, divine, golden, benevolent Emperor. Not the same Emperor who burnt Monarchia, not the same Emperor who culled the Thunder Warriors, not the same Emperor who hated religion. Not him. They are praying to the idolized version of the man on the golden throne, the God Emperor of mankind. To most people, the God Emperor is the most benevolent, beautiful, awesome, amazing being. He is God, pure and simple. He's all good, all loving, all powerful, all great. You have these prayers then that are going to this entity, this almighty, perfect, benevolent God. And let's say there's a shot of the Emperor in the Immaterium. One of the many shots. Let's say it's his nicer version, right? He grabs onto that, and those little prayers are fed to him over 10,000 years. Over all that time, those prayers and that shard would form something new. Because remember, the way that the warp works is that the more followers you have, the more powerful your gods are. Hence, that's why Chaos wants humanity so bad. Not only are we the largest population, some would argue that we have one of, if not the most potent essences in the warp. So now imagine you have a god who has been created by humanity, and he takes the form of the Emperor. But not the Emperor as he was, but the Emperor as the people see him, the benevolent entity, the benevolent deity, the God Emperor of mankind. Imagine that for a second. There is a new god created by humanity in the guise of the Emperor. That same god would be, as the people saw him, a divine retribution wrath made manifest, i.e. going into Nurgle's realm and burning his gardens. But at the same time, he would be noble and just and forgiving and merciful. He would raise Rabute Gilliman back from the dead, and he would extend the hand of redemption to Mortarion. That is hard for me to understand that human Biggie would do. Because human Biggie is a very complex character, mainly because he has about 30 different people writing one same fucking person, but that's neither here nor there. Even if he had one continuous writer, he's a complex character. And his motives, pretty hard to understand. But the Biggie that we saw during the Plague Wars, that is quintessentially the benevolent god. Pure and simple. Now some would argue, oh, that's just Biggie being as cunning as ever, but I think differently. I genuinely believe that humanity has created the Emperor or recreated him, but not as he was, as they see him, a divine, benevolent entity. And if that's the case, that then means Biggie has his own realm in the warp, his own heaven. And what would his heaven look like? Some people rumor that it's the City of Dust, dust representing what Biggie and humanity is, the past. If this entity has any recollection towards Biggie, then it would have some type of obsession with the past. So a City of Dust would make perfect sense. But then that also begs even more questions. If there is this entity who is a god created by humanity, and if he does have a City of Dust as his realm, what else does he have? What about the Legion of the Damned? Well, we know for a fact they're warp entities, but are they the Emperor's angels, or the Emperor's demons? And is it just Legion of the Damned who are space marines? What about the countless souls that went and died? Millions, quadrillions, billions, however many human souls have died, do they mean that they're in the City of Dust, forming an army, waiting for them? What happened to them? What did the Emperor do to them? Did he eat them? Did he consume them? Did he gain power from them? Or are they a standing army waiting? Or could it be that all of the millions of quadrillions of billions of souls that died over the 10,000 years that have gone into the warp have amalgamated into this new emperor. Again, take one of his shards, take all the prayers, take all the souls, and boom, you have a true god of humanity. It would make sense. Whilst they had the emperor as a basis, all these souls that would have died and gone to the warp heaven are souls who genuinely believed in the emperor, in his goodness, in his benevolence, in his grace. Generally speaking, good people. So it makes sense that these people would join this new emperor and make a new type of deity. Or, again, they're all just chilling in heaven, waiting for the emperor to say his word. That then brings us on to the question about the King in Yellow. Well, the King in Yellow is going to be a very big player in the Imperium. He's either going to save it or damn it. Truth be told, we don't really know. But what if he was going to save it? And there are some rumors that it is Constantine Valdor. What if Valdor is part of the warp? What if he is indeed a warp entity? What if he is trying to return with the new legions of the Emperor? What if the King of Yellow is just the right-hand man of this new Emperor? Or maybe it's the opposite. Maybe Valdor is the enemy of the new Emperor. Maybe he sees this new Emperor as the ultimate defiance, the ultimate insult to his original master. So thus, what does he want to do? He wants to kill this new Emperor, kill this new god of humanity, so that we as humans will truly only have the Imperial Creed left to follow, rather than the Imperial Cult. There are so many ways to talk about this, there are so many ways to put out this here. The fact of the matter is, there is an Emperor, and he is indeed a god, but is it the Emperor from 30k? Or is it something altogether new? Let's say though, it is the Emperor on the throne. Let's say he is able, for whatever reason, to gather his psychic mind together, to gather up his shards and create a new entity. That then begs the question, what is this entity going to do? What will the Emperor do? Now we know what the benevolent Emperor would do, the one created by humanity. He'd be a good, kind god, he would absolutely wreck the shit of the Chaos Gods, and he'd return humanity to what it was supposed to be. Kind, beautiful, noble, just, amazing. He'd restore it, because that's what everyone thinks he's going to do, so that's what he's going to try to do. But what if the Emperor from 30k is in fact actually become a god now? Well then that begs the question, what would the Emperor in 30k wanted to do? We know that with the Webway project, Big E wanted to completely separate us from the warp, and have us enter the Webway as something new, something unique, something different. Rumor has it that he wanted to elevate us into a new type of human being. We don't really know exactly what it'd be, but it's some type of demigod, may or may not involving psychic energies. Again, we don't really know, but we have a rough idea. He wanted to put us in the Webway and he wanted to make us better. Now, what if all of a sudden Big E was a god in the warp? A order god rather than a chaos god, or a different flavor of chaos god if you want to be a little bit pedantic about it. What if that was Big E now, and he wakes up? Now, what's he going to do? He can't just shove us into the Webway because he's part of the warp, so then that leaves him the next option. He needs to make the warp safe. How does he make the warp safe? He joins the Great Game and the other realms of chaos to fight the Emperor. Right now, we don't really know exactly if the Emperor has his own warp realm. The City of Dust has been mentioned, it's the closest thing we have, but it could just be a rumor or an illusion or something else. Truth be told, we don't really know. But what if the City of Dust does indeed exist? And Big E is just preparing. He's been preparing for over 10,000 years. Perhaps maybe the reason why he hasn't really gotten up out of the Golden Throne, why he hasn't revived himself, is because he's waiting. He's building up his strength in the City of Dust until one day he's going to catch the Chaos Gods when they're weak. He's going to unveil the City of Dust and unleash his millions of trillions of hordes of human souls to conquer the warp, or try and conquer part of the warp, to have a safe space for humanity to travel and live and exist. Then Big E would become another Chaos God. He'd be a god of order, in this case, probably, not exactly benevolent, but definitely of order, and he'd have his avatars. He'd have his own demons. He'd have his way. You think about the way that the Imperium works as is. Every single Imperial Saint, every single Sanguinor, Legion of the Damned, Sister Reborn, whatever it may be, they're basically chosen of the Emperor. They're the Emperor's demon princes. They've been elevated, they've been bestowed upon his power. The only difference is that with the Chaos Gods, you have millions of demons that have their own power. With Big E, he has his own power all to himself. So he gets to pick and choose who gets it and who doesn't. You think about that as is. The Emperor wants to carve out his own empire. And eventually, knowing Big E, he's not going to settle for just a little bit. If 30k Big E has indeed transcended into a Chaos God in the warp, he is going to want to try and conquer the warp. Now whether or not he can, that's a different subject for a whole other different video. But the fact of the matter is, Big E is going to try and conquer the warp. He's going to try and carve out a section. He's going to try and make it safe for humanity. Because the whole Webway route is now fucked off because he's literally part of the warp. So the only other option is for him to conquer the warp, get rid of the Chaos Gods, and make the rest of it safe for humanity. And when you think about it, that may be what Big E does. But then, there's another option. And this is a little secret third option here. What if Big E has already been a god, but this is how he chooses to act? Let me explain. Big E is a god, right now in Warhammer 40k. He chooses to sit on his throne of gold. And he doesn't do anything because he doesn't want to. He lets his legions of humanity feed him their prayers. And they do the fighting, and every now and again when Big E gets that feeling, he will then give a random human being some of his holy power. And it would be during that time that the Emperor would imbue them as a living saint. When he wishes, he will send out his Legion of the Damned. When he wishes, he'll send out his Imperial Demons. All the while, he's just waiting for humanity to carry the burden. Maybe he already is a god, and this is just how he chooses. Maybe he has the potential to rise himself from the Golden Throne, but he chooses not to. Now granted, this is the worst case scenario, because that means Big E is just even more of an asshole than he was in 30k, which Jesus Christ, Lord Almighty tell me how. But ultimately, it does make you wonder, what would Big E really do? Because we all have this idea, that when Big E becomes a god, when everything is finally ready, he will return. He'll return as the Emperor, and then everything will be different. That's just what we as a community think will happen. But would he really? Would the Emperor really return back from wherever he is? Or would he continue to do something else? Would he choose a different route, a different option, a different way of handling things, a different way of fighting? What if he just decided to flip the script? What if he decided that the materium wasn't worth it? The immaterium is where he needs to be now. And I've given you one idea about a god being created by humanity, that being the benevolent emperor. But just as there is a benevolent emperor, couldn't there be a malevolent emperor? Because remember, the imperial cult is divided into several hundreds if not thousands of sects. Each different planet has a different interpretation of the emperor. Each one of them acts in their own way. Each one of them does what they think the emperor will do. I mean, the most extreme example are the Gene Stealer cults, where they believe in the four-armed emperor, i.e. Big E, but as a Gene Stealer or a Gene Stealer hybrid. If every single person prays to the emperor, they pray to their version of the emperor, does that mean that in the warp there are hundreds of different emperors being coalesced? Instead of one giant big emperor, are there just several others waiting to be popped out? For while we may have the benevolent emperor, and he may be the main emperor, does that really mean that he will be the only emperor? What if we get a heaven and hell type situation where there is a benevolent emperor and a malevolent emperor? Or could there be a whole pantheon of emperors? Could the forearm emperor be included? Could it be a knightly emperor? Could it be a tax emperor? Could it be a preaching emperor? Or is it simply just not enough? But I'm starting to ramble a bit now. So let me bring it back into form and let me wrap all this up. There is a god of humanity. Everyone knows that. Even Gilliman recognizes that. And that god is based on Big E. But the question is, what exactly is this god? Again, I personally believe that this is a god of humanity created by the prayers and souls of humanity. And he is going to establish the City of Dust, he's going to make it in the warp, and he is going to have his own place there. And he's going to be the heaven to counteract the hell of the Chaos Gods. That is what I personally believe. But truth be told, we don't know who that big golden dude was who burned down Nurgle's gardens, who resurrected Gilliman, and who offered Mortarion a hand. It could be the Emperor from the Golden Throne, it could be one of his shards, or it could be a new god of humanity. But ultimately, what we need to think about is, what is it? What does this mean? For the first time in a long time, Big E directly went to the warp. He directly went in there, and he properly fucked up Papa Nurgle. That means that the Emperor is now active in the warp again. We don't know if he always was. It could be a case of he was, but GW never did tell us that, because they love doing that with their lore. But what if it's not? What if the Emperor is now suddenly back in the warp? He's back in there. He's back doing things. Maybe in the Immaterium he leaves to Bobby G, but what does that mean for the warp as a whole? What does that mean for the setting as a whole? If the Emperor of Mankind is still so powerful that he can fuck up one of the big four, what does that mean for all of us? And what is the Emperor really hiding? I guess, ultimately, we're just gonna have to wait and see what the god of humanity really does decide to do, and whether or not he truly is benevolent or malevolent. But yeah, ladies and gentlemen, thank you all so very much for watching. I do love and appreciate y'all. Let me know down below, What do you guys think about the whole idea? Do you think that the person who burned down Nurgle's garden is still Big E from 30k? Do you think it's a shard? Or do you subscribe to my theory that it is a brand new god of benevolence created by humanity? Let me know what you guys think. But I want to say a massive thank you for you guys for watching, and an even bigger massive thank you to my members. Big shout out to my Lieutenant tier members, Mr. Eddie V3 and Miss Madra of the Void. Big shout out to my Sergeant tier members, Mr. Damiak, Mr. Andy McGee, Mr. Warsmith.Fireheart, Mr. RB20 Guy, and Mr. Corns Butcher. And shout out to my private tier members, Mr. Thomas Muslons, Mr. Ivan_SBW, and Mr. Michael Hayeda. Thank you, each and every one of you. The fact that you guys have so much faith in me and that you guys are willing to support me means the world to me. It's only because of amazing people like you that I can even consider to do this full time, and you sincerely have my thanks. But if y'all want to join these awesome peeps, sign up with our memberships. You get early access to these videos, behind the scenes stuff, progress updates, schedules, and you guys get a hand in running the channel. If any big thing happens, they'll get a vote for you guys, and you guys will just be the first one to be involved, get a little extra say. But remember, this will always be free, and I will love you regardless, whether you give me $1 or not. Mwah! Yes, I will. But ladies and gentlemen, let me know what you think down below. Make sure to like, comment, share, subscribe, do all that wonderful YouTube stuff. Especially hit that subscribe button. We're trying to hit 100k by the end of the year. It's a goddamn long goal, but baby, we're gonna shoot for the stars and we're gonna hit the sky. But I've been the General Bradley 101. You've been beautiful, awesome, and amazing people. Thank y'all all so very much for watching. Make sure to stay honorable out there, boys and girls. And I will catch y'all next time. Dismiss, Rangers! I'm just saying, I want there to be a scene in the warp where Corn squares up with Big E, we get Big Axe versus Golden Sword, and just get a fucking Titan fight. War in Heaven 2.0, motherfucker. The return of Big E. Fuck me, that'd be cool.